Hello, Canucks fans. Welcome back to another episode of Canucks Conversation, which is brought to you by Bet365. Open an account with Bet365 today and bet on a huge range of markets. However, the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Be sure to use code NATION when you sign up for an account. My name is David Quadrelli. I am joined by Harmon Dial, and I'm using the wrong microphone, which has started to happen recently. I don't really know why, but it's happened recently, so I'm going to fix that right now. So now we're back. Harmon, how was the weekend?
It was all right. Still doing my best to try and recover, but yeah, I'm feeling better. Still coughing, but ready to get the show going.
Powering through, playing hurt once again. 2 games to talk about. Let's start the show by doing that. Canucks fall flat versus the Dallas Stars on the weekend. Now, this was an interesting one because if you read the stats, he's over at CanucksArmy.com, you would read that their chance creation, where they were shooting from, you look at that heat map, that's actually a decent looking heat map. It looked like a game that the Canucks may have had as, let's call it what it is, a coin flip, right? And that's what this team's going for when they face teams like the Dallas Stars, these top teams. Seemed like a coin flip. The Canucks don't get the finishing, and unfortunately don't get the goals that they need. And the title of today's show is The Canucks Can't Score, and that's why.
Yeah, I don't think it's quite as simple as the Canucks didn't get the finishing, because their bottom 6 guys were the ones who were creating the bulk of the chances. It wasn't Pettersson outside of the shot he had off the post early in the first period. It wasn't DeBrusk. It wasn't Boeser. So if you're relying on, a lot of those net front chances were from grinders, were from players that you don't expect to finish chances at a prolific rate. So to a certain extent, I wasn't surprised that like, put it this way, I don't think this was, oh, great offensive showing, they just got reverse PDO'd. It was okay, they played decently, they were working hard, they were stingy defensively, but because their big dogs got outplayed up front, they weren't able to drive offense. It was yet again a struggle to actually manufacture goals, and it was one of those two where when you're playing such a low event game, every mistake is magnified. There's such a small margin for error. And when I look at the Stars game winner, that's just the type of mistake you can't make. And when you look at the Stars, a veteran team that was playing on the second leg of a back-to-back, 30 seconds left in the second period, Canucks have a defensive zone faceoff draw. It's really surprising to me that you can mix up your defensive coverage in a situation like that. The team knows the leverage of that draw. Forbort and Myers end up doubled up with the net front guy, leaving Mikael Granlund free. And then the second big mistake there, Kevin Lankinen punching a rebound with his blocker perfectly to Granlund. Both those things can't happen that late into the period, because instead, if this team is 1-1 heading into the third period, there's a good chance of them at least salvaging a point.
Not a great game for Kevin Lankinen. Not a great game for the Canucks big dogs, as you called them, and as you mentioned there. Brock Boeser, Elias Pettersson, and Jake DeBrusk all coming in with pretty low minutes as this game went down. Rick Tocchet spoke post-game about this, and we have this clip. Technical producer Jacob Lazar is going to pull it up for us. It is Rick Tocchet post-game talking about the low ice time for those guys, especially in a game where you're trailing. This is what Rick Tocchet had to say.
No, I don't have that clip. Yeah, I'm going to need to get that clip. No, I don't have it.
Okay. Jacob's going to go get that clip.
Yes.
I don't know why we don't have it. That's okay. That's okay. Basically what he said is you have to earn your ice time. And that was the quote. That was the headline. You have to earn your ice time. I don't care how long you've been here. I think that's the Brock Boeser part of the conversation, the Elias Pettersson part of the conversation. You have to earn your ice time. That's what it takes to win Stanley Cups, was the quote from Rick Tocchet. We don't need the clip, Jacob. It's okay. That was a quote from Rick Tocchet. We're going to talk about Brock Boeser. I have some info to report, actually. When does that ever happen? I have some info to report on Brock Boeser. Actually, I have a lot of info to report on Brock Boeser. I'm going to get to that, and I'm going to save it for anyone else. But when I look at all of this, the thing that comes to mind is alignment. And how much last season do we talk about organizational alignment? And really, since Jim Rutherford's come in, how much do we talk about organizational alignment, right? Where it was, we know Jim Rutherford has a good relationship with ownership, and that at this stage of his career, like, Jim Rutherford didn't need this job. It had to be the right situation for him. And he talked about that. And he talked about managing up when he got hired in Vancouver. And the thing that I'm looking at now is I'm like, what part of the Canucks organization's aligned right now? Like, I have no doubt management's aligned. Like, Patrick Allvin and Jim Rutherford, by all accounts, they seem really well aligned. But like, Rick Tocchet seems like he's out of answers, right? So I look at that and say, okay, there's no alignment between player and coach because he needs more from his players. Then I look at it and say, like, Rick Tocchet's getting what he can out of this roster in their current form, and these players have had a bunch of coaches. And really, we've talked about this all season long, and Rick Tocchet is not absolved from all criticism when it comes to what's going on with the Canucks and what's wrong with the Canucks. But at the end of the day, like, this roster isn't fantastic by any means. The number one center isn't playing like a number one center. We know this. So then I say, okay, you've got a disconnect from the players to the coach. And now this roster, when we start talking about the roster, we go back to management. It's like, Rick Tocchet doesn't have a contract for next year. Feels like there's a disconnect between coach and management, which again isn't something we've seen before with these people, right? Like, this was their coach, this was management's coach, and he's not signed for next year. And look, I'm not sitting here saying that's all management's fault. There's a lot of people wondering if Rick Tocchet, really wants to be here next year, or if he's thinking about, at the very least, what he's going to do next year, what's best for him next year. And so I'm not trying to point fingers or anything here. I'm just saying that right now, when you look at it, it really does feel like this organization is once again just not aligned the way they were before.
Yeah, I mean, look, they've faced so much adversity, right? Everything that could have gone wrong for them this season has gone wrong, as far as injuries, how many people, you want to talk about alignment, your two-star players, your two best forwards couldn't get along this season, and it resulted in the trade of JT put this organization in a tough spot, and yeah, they made out okay as far as getting Hedel back and indirectly also getting Marcus Pettersson and Drew O'Connor, but it really took away from the high-end offensive talent on this roster. And look, even when JT was here and he was playing, he wasn't as engaged as he normally is. He looked like a player that was checked out. He looked like a player that didn't want to be here. I made the point previously that even just being around him in the locker room, he seemed like a player that was going through something, that seemed down, something was wrong. And to see him immediately with the fresh start in New York light it up, to me, that's not a reflection of, oh, the Canucks traded the wrong guy, they should have kept him. To me, it was just not gonna work out, where alignment, Miller and the Canucks, for whatever combination of reasons, it wasn't working anymore. So this organization's been, fractured at the player level. It's been challenging for, I think, like, how many times has Tocchet sort of spoken post game and in some fashion expressed frustration around, we had this type of game plan and the players just didn't execute. And then that's not necessarily to say it's all the players' fault, but one way or another, there's a level of frustration that the coaching staff has had with the players this year. So, this is what adversity sort of creates sometimes, and you just hope that they can right the ship and stabilize things down the stretch, because it's been really tough to watch this team at times.
Yeah. The game against the Stars, obviously we opened talking about that. The game against the Wild, obviously it was a win for the Canucks. It was a 3-1 win. Bit of a different story. It was continuing the Elias Pettersson is back propaganda. He scores a one-timer goal. Vibes were good after that game, Harm. Vibes were really good. And obviously, as you can tell by the way we opened the show today, vibes aren't good because it really just comes down to the fact that the Canucks can't really score when they go up against a contending team. Again, like, they stood in there, they worked hard, they held their own to some extent against a much better Dallas team. But also, like, that Dallas team is missing their number one center, their number one defenseman. Well, I guess, Rantanen might be. Anyways, we're not going to get into that. Second back-to-back, again, where the Stars lost to the Oilers. Casey DeSmith and net. Canucks should have held their own, and they did. They did. So I'm trying to give them credit, but I'm also pointing out that, while the Stars are a contender and a real top team, that wasn't the best version of the Stars that you're going to see on any given night. So again, how many flowers are we throwing? Not too many. Again, against the Wild, bit of a different story. The Canucks played pretty well on Friday night. You had the Elias Pettersson one-timer. You had Philip Hronek putting up 2 assists. He played well as well in that game. And I don't know, man. It just the vibes were pretty good after the Friday game because it's okay. Trade deadline's behind them. Now's a chance to just focus. And then it felt like Sunday was just a reminder of like, oh yeah, okay. The vibes might be good, but at its core, like this team still can't score and doesn't have the firepower up front.
Yeah, and there is no silver bullet, right? I wrote an article about a week ago analyzing some of the reasons for this team's offensive struggles, and there isn't really a simple solution. There's so many different facets. Rush offense, they struggle. In zone, a lot of times this year, the forward goal sort of being the exception last night and being actually an example of more of what they need to do, where you actually get dynamic off puck movement from your defenseman instead of just going low to high, point to
East-West
point.
Derek Forbert, baby.
I mean, seriously, it was great, but they don't generate enough east-west passing movement. They also just don't have enough true top of the lineup difference makers. Considering Pettersson's been operating at this level, and DeBrusk and Boeser, both of them are talented goal scorers, but they're complementary guys. They don't have enough drivers. They're obviously without Quinn Hughes, right? That's massive. It's like every game that they try and win feels like it has to be a 2-1, 3-1 type of victory. 3-2, maybe if you get to overtime, Canucks might get the third goal. But how many games in a row has it been where they've been limited to 3 or fewer goals?
It's not good, Harm. It's not good. And what is the answer to that question that you just asked at the end? Like, I'm going to look this up. I want to make sure I have it right because it has been a few, which is why I couldn't say it off the top of my head. It has been, oh my gosh.
It's been a really long time, man.
Dude,
I don't know if they've done it since the
Hmm.
JT trade.
I can't
believe
do this off the top of my head. It's before JT.
The last time they scored more than 3 goals in a game was the
Habs.
5-2 win over St. Louis on January 27th, if I'm correct here.
Oh yes, that's it. And then before that, it was
but then even
the
before
Habs.
that, yeah, it was the Habs game back in the beginning of January, which wasn't even a win. So they've had more than 3 goals in a win once since 2024.
All right. Anything else you want to say about the weekend games before we get to our poll question, which is more about how the Canucks can't score?
Well, I want to get to Jacob through this in our chat here. This one from A Hud saying Miller when he was on the team, PD, Boeser, Hogs, Joshua all having major down years. Coaching is part of the problem, not 100% on them, but definitely plays a factor. So this one's interesting because I actually went back and in my article last week, I looked at the 9 current Canucks forwards who have played at least 35 games with Tocchet this season and looked at those players' career points per game rate in the NHL and their points per game production overall while Tocchet has been head coach. And it was like 7 of the 9 forwards have produced more under Tocchet than their NHL career norm. So to me, for example, when you look at Elias Pettersson had 112 points in his first 85 games under Rick Tocchet. That's too large of a sample size to say, oh, Rick Tocchet's the one holding Pettersson back, especially when we saw Pettersson pointless at the Worlds playing for Sam Hallam, who was his former head coach in Vancouver in the SHL, where the two of them had tremendous success. If there was one coach on this planet that you would expect to unlock the best from Elias Pettersson, it'd be that type of environment, especially in on a team where he had legit stud line mates to play with. And we saw at the end of the tournament, he was benched.
Yep.
So I don't know, especially with some of these core guys like Petey, Garland, Boeser. It was at the time that I was looking at the numbers, almost a 200 game sample of them producing at a slightly higher rate under Tocchet than their NHL career norms. Brock Boeser, for example, yeah, he had the 40-goal campaign last year, but through his first 6 seasons in Vancouver, how many times was he inconsistent offensively? How many times did he end up in trade rumors because he was having troubles putting the puck in the back of the net, and there would be those criticisms of, oh, he's not the quickest skater. I even remember going back to the 2019-20 season when some people in this market were like, Jake Virtanen was on pace for 20 goals, and people were saying, oh, keep Virtanen, trade Brock. Like, that was a legit narrative. The point being, Boeser's not been this consistent 30 to 40 goal scorer who all of a sudden has forgotten how to produce under Tocchet. Joshua, I mean, guy literally had cancer. I don't think that's Rick Tocchet's fault that Joshua hasn't had his usual jump. Hoglander, I will say, I wonder if there's a large coaching element there where I don't think Hoglander's gotten enough of a leash.
Sure.
I wonder if he'd thrive elsewhere. But even with Hoglander, you could argue, hey, this is the third coach that he's ended up in the doghouse with. So I don't know if I fully buy this narrative that it's the coach holding these players back.
Yep, I agree with you. Again, did you see this over the weekend? The system breakdown. There was another one that talked about how much the Canucks go glass and out, and how much they love to have that center low to assist in the glass and out. So there's some of it, but you're right. You're right. You're right. It is mostly on the players, it feels like. And again, roster construction, whatever you want to say. When we talked about Rick Tocchet earlier, we did allude to the fact that maybe he wants to go somewhere else. Like, I think he'll find a job somewhere.
I think part of the problem too, and why I was kind of bringing this up about how tedious it is watching the team play this year, and how the games have had zero entertainment value for the most part. 100% agree there, and that is on Tocchet, where he's intentionally trying to grind out low event, low scoring type of victories. And I think this is part of the reason why there's a negative perception around Tocchet is if you're going to play ugly hockey, you better win. Otherwise, if you're going to be a mediocre team that saps all the fun and joy out of watching hockey, you're going to be more likely to really draw the ire of this fan base, because a lot of times it's more like I've heard fans saying rather watch paint dry than watch this Canucks team play at home sometimes. So I get that to some extent. But the argument I've always brought up is if you open things up, sure, you might get more offense. But I think with this group, I'm just not convinced that this group can do both things as far as attacking and defending at a high level. So they are horrific offensively right now. And yeah, 100%, that's a stylistic preference where they want to be low event. But if they made a concerted effort to let's prioritize generating more offense at all costs, you generate more offense and you look a little bit more entertaining while doing it. But this team's defensive bottom, I feel like, would just fall out because they've never shown under any head coach that they can do both things at the same time.
Yeah, because people in the chat were like, oh, well, under Bruce, there it is. They were a way higher scoring team. Let's not forget how those games went
tire fire.
When they broke records for the most multi-goal leads blown in games. They couldn't do anything when it came to defending and keeping the puck out of their own net. This is a response to yours. This is from Conversation, regulars in the show. Said, Harman, what do you make of the fact that the Canucks are near the bottom of the league for expected goals for per 60 for the entire year? Is this just on the players? It's not based on the fact that the system can't produce offense?
Well, that's what I'm saying is you're looking at a purely offensive stat. And I agree with you. If you brought a new head coach in, sure, you want to go back to more freewheeling hockey, you're going to get better offensive results, unquestionably. But look at where this team was before Rick Tocchet came in defensively. We're talking about one of the worst teams in the league at defending the rush, constant breakdowns, tons of goals against. And since Tocchet has come over, they were elite defensively last year. I don't think they've been elite defensively this year, but you still look at their shot and chance defensive metrics according to Natural Stat Trick, they're top 10 in both categories. They're still a decisively above average team. And so while we look at that Stars game, for example, and go another game where they couldn't really muster anything offensively and they look kind of lifeless, they also limited that Stars team to less than 20 shots? So that's my big that's my big takeaway is yes, Tocchet's limiting the offense to some extent, but offense doesn't exist in a vacuum. If you open it up, I just don't think you have the personnel to where you're going to give up a lot more defensively too.
Yep. You're bang on. We're going to get to anyone else soon, but I want to get to our poll question, which is kind of more about scoring and a lack of scoring. It's our poll question, and it is brought to you by the great folks at Pacific Toyota. Pacific Toyota dealers want to tell you about 100% electric Toyota BZ4X, an SUV that is packed with plenty of space. The BZ4X is backed by the peace of mind that comes with knowing you're driving a Toyota. When you choose the BZ4X, you can get up to $6,500 in rebates and incentives, and now you can finance a 2025 BZ4X from 3.29% APR for 36 months. Visit shoptoyota.ca or your local Pacific Toyota dealer today. And don't forget about the contest, which we told you about for a while now. The grand prize of which includes 2 tickets to the Konica Minolta Champions Club at Rogers Arena for the April 6th game between the Canucks and Golden Knights, along with 2 Canucks jerseys. If you want to win, all you have to do is check out the link in our episode description or follow Toyota Pacific on Instagram and Facebook at Toyota Pacific for your chance to enter. This contest is open only to residents of BC and Yukon who are of the age of majority. Okay, let's pull it up. Our poll question today. Which forward will lead the Canucks in points by the end of the season? Currently, Brock Boeser and Connor Garland lead the team with 38. Jake DeBrusk and Elias Pettersson are tied for second place at 36 points.
This is a depressing poll question.
41.2% say Elias Pettersson. 30.5% say Connor Garland, 19.9% say Jake DeBrusk, and just 8.4% say Brock Boeser, who again shares the team lead with Connor Garland. I unequivocally am going Connor Garland here, 100%, because Connor Garland has been steady all season long. He's gone through a couple dry spells, but with Elias Pettersson, I see why people voted Pettersson. He's looked better recently. He scored that one-timer goal. But Connor Garland's just steady. Connor Garland's just going to keep giving you what he gives you. Brock Boeser's gone cold since JT Miller left. I'm going with Connor Garland for this one. Another question is, how many Canucks will break 50 points? How many Canucks, not named Quinn Hughes, obviously, will break 50 points on the season?
It might be 0.
It might be. Remember you saying that about my Flames?
Yeah. Man.
How the turntables, Harm.
Seriously, it's wild. I mean, Garland will need 12 points in his last 19 games.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, the way Garland's been going lately, he might not get there. I mean, it's been a struggle for him. I know he got the assist on Forbird's goal, but over the last 20 to 30 games, he hasn't been producing many points. Honestly, if I had to bet today, I would say no Canucks forward hits 50 points this year.
That's fair.
They only have 19
very
games.
fair. You'd have to see some different paces than what we've seen recently, no doubt.
Can you imagine if the Canucks leading forward scorer ends the season with like 49 points?
I can't imagine. It feels like that's where we're headed. Who do you think it is, though? Like, give me a name. Who do you think leads them in points by the end of the season? I'm going Connor Garland.
Garland as well.
Okay. All right. Let's go to something more fun. Let's get to anyone else early today. Maybe a shorter show today. We'll see. We always say that. I got a lot here for this segment, though, so buckle up. It's anyone else. It's brought to you by Greta Bar YVR, the home of our electric watch parties. Greta's a great spot for all games, home and away. Conveniently located just minutes from the arena. Make Greta your pre, post, or main spot to chill next time you're downtown. With drinks, the iconic street food menu, and, of course, the arcade games, head on down to Greta today. 50 West Cordova Street is the address. Let the games begin. Okay, I've got a lot here, Harm. Let's talk about Brock Boeser. Let's talk about Brock Boeser and the Vancouver Canucks and the Carolina Hurricanes. Now, I'm putting all of this into an article over at Canucks Army, but I spent my weekend doing a bunch of digging, talking to different sources from all over the place. Got a lot of info to share. I'm going to share it carefully on the show, and then when I have the ability to reread everything and look over all the information I've been given over the past 72 hours, I'm going to put in an article over at CanucksArmy.com. That is going to come hopefully this afternoon. But what I can say is the Canucks were offered a first-round pick from Brock Boeser. That pick came from the Carolina Hurricanes as well. That was an offer that the Canucks knew they were going to get. What the Canucks didn't know, and Alvin talked about this, the idea of going around the league and maybe looking at kind of a pivot deal, the way they did with the Drew O'Connor and Marcus Pettersson trade, where when they got the first from the JT Miller trade, they were able to quickly flip it. Shocker, they didn't do that in a day. They had talked to the Penguins before that and knew that, hey, like if we get this pick in this trade with the Rangers, we're going to flip it to you and we want this in return. So the groundwork for that deal was done days in advance. The Canucks were working to try to get a deal like that for this trade deadline. And ultimately, I think it happened. But really what this comes down to is that the Canucks were offered a first round pick, for Brock Boeser from the Carolina Hurricanes. Obviously, I believe it's the one of the picks that they got in the Mikko Rantanen trade. What it really comes down to is that offer came really late. So the Canucks had to quickly decide, basically. They knew it was coming. Like the Hurricanes gave them a heads up that, hey, this might take a while because, and what we know, it came out early that Dallas wasn't going to finalize that trade until they knew they could sign Mikko Rantanen. So, Dallas dragged their feet a little bit here, and that kind of affected things for sure. So I can tell you, yes, a first round pick was offered. The thing that I've been able to gather is that came really late. I think it might have come as soon as 20 minutes before noon Pacific. Maybe 30 minutes, but again, you're in that final hour. Certainly within that final hour, the call from Carolina to Vancouver happened where they said, hey, we have your first round pick. And then the Canucks said, okay, we'll get back to you. And for whatever reason, it didn't materialize. And I'm coming out and reporting stuff. I'm not going to sit here and speculate what happened. The Canucks didn't accept that offer. Again, I don't know if it was the 2026 pick. I don't know if it was a different first round pick. I don't know what first round pick it was. And maybe that played into it for the Canucks as well. What I do know is the Canucks said no. And again, when we heard Patrick Alvin talk, he was not very happy with the offers that the Canucks got for Brock Boeser. But it was a first round pick. I do know the pick that was offered was a first round pick. Now, what else do I have here? I have it all written down. And again, like I said, I'm going to put it all in an article. There was a report today, I think it was from Rick Dollywald, that the Canucks made an offer somewhere between Wednesday and Thursday. I've been told that offer came on Thursday for Brock Boeser. Excuse me, I should have said that. Contract offer for Brock Boeser from the Canucks did come on Thursday. And the other info I've gotten is that this idea that Jesperi Kotkaniemi was involved at all is being heavily denied by everyone that I've talked to. Kotkaniemi not involved as far as I know. So, and also the other thing I wonder, this isn't something I've been told, is I just wonder how much the Canucks actually like Jesperi Kotkaniemi. I don't think they like Kotkaniemi very much. I think they look at it and say we probably need someone with a higher ceiling than Jesperi Kotkaniemi. So my information is that he was not involved in these trade talks between the Hurricanes and the Canucks. But also, different people have different reasons for wanting certain info out there. So my understanding is Kotkaniemi was never involved. The Canucks were offered a first round pick. That offer came pretty late, close to the trade deadline. And I have more, but I'm going to put it in the article because I want to be able to reread it. And I take this seriously. When I actually do come out and report stuff, I want to make sure I have everything correct. So I've spent the weekend digging into all of this. And I can tell you the Canucks were offered a first round pick for Brock Boeser. Don't know the year. Don't know what went wrong for the Canucks, what happened after that. But I do know Carolina did offer that first round pick for Brock Boeser.
Yeah, and in my mind, the first thing that pops up is I wonder if the hang-up from the Canucks perspective was they wouldn't have had enough time to flip that first round pick into something that would help them now, right? That second order thinking where, as you alluded to, they make that trade for Miller, get that first round pick, immediately flip it for a couple pieces that can help them not only long term, but immediately. It's clear to me anyway that this organization really prioritizes making the playoffs this year. And the hang up in my mind is just at this point, is Brock Boeser even going to be a make or break player as far as making the playoffs down the stretch, given that he doesn't have JT Miller. He's struggling mightily. And
look at the minutes. Look at the minutes he just got.
And playing with Suter and DeBrusk, all three of those forwards are complementary guys. They vary between good to excellent complementary players, but none of them are drivers. And you could kind of see that last night, where sometimes DeBrusk would get the puck, and you could tell he kind of realized, I'm the fastest guy on this line. Suter and Brock don't really create a lot. So he was trying to be a little bit more ambitious as a playmaker, but it sort of felt like he was on an island. He was having to try to make plays that don't think he was fully comfortable with, hanging on to the puck a lot longer. And like, I don't blame him for trying those things, because somebody has to try and make plays on the line, but it didn't quite work. And that's why I wonder, you kept Brock, you reportedly turned down this first round pick. Is he even going to make that big of a difference for you down the stretch here?
I mean, we're going to talk about that. That's going to be a conversation as well. I do want to quickly go back to this, though, this whole Boeser stuff, because now I'm going to speculate a little bit. And now this report mode is off, okay? No more report. No one quote this and put it on Twitter and say, oh, this is a report. Now I wonder what went wrong, but why the Canucks might have said no. And again, I just told you, the pick was offered within 30 minutes of the trade deadline actually hitting. Would that have meant the Canucks didn't have enough time to go flip it? Yeah, probably. Could the Canucks have had a organizational mandate that, hey, we're not leaving the trade deadline with just a pick or just a prospect? Again, they were in on Josh Norris. We know that. Could that have been something that happened? Yeah, sure. But again, I just look at it and say, okay, we know these things, and again, we have to be careful with it, of course, but I don't doubt for a second that when Alvin comes out and says his quote about, if I told you what we were offered for Boeser, I would have had to run out of here. Like, he probably wasn't really happy that it was just a first round pick, right? Or that it was just a, whatever year first round pick it was, or that it came so late. Like, I'm sure they weren't happy about that, because the indication I've gotten is that Carolina basically gave them the heads up, like, this is what the return is. Let's not forget this deal between the Canes and the Stars for Mikko Rantanen started getting reported on Thursday night. So the deadline was kind of a lot of sitting around and waiting. And I think, honestly, like, I know there were other teams that poked in on Boeser, and I don't think that's the other thing that I am going to write about as well. Those offers weren't, I don't know for sure that those offers were a first round pick. It could very well be that they were offered seconds for Boeser, thirds, whatever package you want to cook up in your head. It's very possible that was what they were getting most of the day. And then with 20 minutes to go till the deadline, they get a call from Carolina saying, hey, we got your first round pick. And the Canucks said, okay, well, it's too late now. We don't want to do this for X reason, right? That's how I think things played out. So again, it's not black and white. There's a lot of gray here, but I do know that the Canucks were, in the end, offered a first-round pick for Brock Boeser from the Carolina Hurricanes, but for whatever reason, that a deal did not materialize. So, and again, I don't know anything beyond that. People are asking me to try to guess. I'm not going to tell you. I'm not going to guess. I'm telling you what I know. That's it.
Yeah, and to me, it shouldn't be the position the Canucks are in this year. I think a lot of us can sort of sense that this team isn't going to accomplish much, as far as, even if they do make it in, they don't have the offensive juice to really make noise in the playoffs. A lot of fans are sort of looking at this year as a write-off, and it's about building the best possible roster for next season. So even if you couldn't flip that first round pick into something that could help you down the stretch, who cares? Right? Who cares? Use that first round pick in the summer, in the offseason, dangle it around then, maybe combine it with other pieces and try and leverage that to go out and get that high-end top six centerman you need. There wasn't a 30-minute, 20-minute time crunch on, as soon as you get a first round pick, you got to flip it immediately. You would have had months before the start of next season. But again, this is the difference, right? Where we suspect that the Canucks have a pretty short-sighted window when it comes to how badly they want to make the postseason this year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I don't have much more, honestly. I do have some. I'm gonna save it for the article. Yeah, I try to be really careful when I come out and say this stuff and when I come out and actually report stuff like this. So that's what I have. I'm not gonna go into it more. I'll write more in the article and we'll get into it. Did you have anything you wanted to say before we close out? Anyone else? I had two things that I wanted to get to.
No, you fire away.
Okay, just poking around the league a little bit here. You look around at what other teams were saying about their trade deadline. Actually, no, one last thing about Tulski and the Hurricanes. Sorry. I think the other part in this that people need to recognize is I think the Hurricanes thought they were getting Boeser to some extent. Tulski came out and basically said we ran out of time when he was talking about how the Canes deadline went. Do you think the Canes wanted to walk away from Mikko Rantanen and have 2 first-round picks and Logan Stankoven to show for it? Like, the whole reason they went out and got Mikko Rantanen was to make them a better team at playoff time. And, of course, with the idea of signing the player. Brock Boeser, although a watered-down version of Mikko Rantanen, certainly would have given them a boost to their roster. So I think that's the other part to recognize about all of this is that after the deadline, when Tulski was doing his media, he talked about how they had some stuff in the works that they were hoping to get, they were hoping to get over the finish line. And I believe that that was Brock Boeser, that I think the Carolina Hurricanes did think they were going to get Brock Boeser by the end of the trade deadline. But really, I know people in Vancouver are going to say this is the Canucks' fault. People in Carolina are going to say this is the Canes' fault. Really isn't the Dallas Stars' fault. The Dallas Stars held everyone hostage here. That's what it comes down to for me. And I'm not going to sit here. I know people want me to come out and say, oh, well, clearly what happened is the Canucks hung up the phone and had to go ask Francesco, and he wasn't around, so they had to go call ownership, and they had to leave a voicemail. No. Whatever reason that the Canucks said no, the fact of the matter is, this was an offer late, close to the trade deadline, really close to the actual deadline. And for whatever reason that it was, the Canucks couldn't pull it off. If the offer came at 10 a.m. Pacific, I think Brock Boeser's a Carolina Hurricane. But because it wasn't concrete and they couldn't get something else done on the side, we sit here today and Brock Boeser is still a Canuck. But let's also not forget Carolina's role in all this, and Dallas's role in all of this, and that Carolina also wanted a player like Brock Boeser at the end of the day, because what did they have to show for their deadline? Basically, they got held hostage, and they came away. Again, we talked about it on Friday that, okay, at least they got value for Mikko Rantanen, but like, how do you think Carolina's feeling about their chances in the playoffs now?
Well, and especially after Florida and Tampa loaded up as well, right?
Well, that's what I was saying too, is in the aftermath of the Rantanen trade, getting Stankoven and 2 first-round picks isn't bad value considering the original starting point of they only really had a year and a half of Natchez left plus Jack Drury. But man, you would have liked it a whole lot better if they'd found a way to flip one of their firsts into a top 6 winger like Brock Boeser, who I suspect if you put him on Sebastian Aho's line, that's a play driving center who I think Aho and Boeser would have had success together.
It's a similar story out there. But you're right. Would have made them a better team. And that's all it comes down to, if you ask me. Okay, I'm going to have more on this later on Canucks Army. I'm going to write it all out. Got some more stuff as well to share, so I'll do that. CanucksArmy.com. Okay, I wanted to do this as we kind of poked around the league a little bit. We were just talking about the Mikko Rantanen trade, and we were talking about the Carolina Hurricanes. Did you catch what Rod Brind'Amour had to say about Mikko Rantanen on the way out?
No, I know he said something, but
I was hoping you would say that. You are in for a treat. Here is the quote from Rod Brind'Amour, and I'm going to read it out. I believe it was, I have it written out here. So this was the quote from Rod Brind'Amour. I'm going to read it in full, okay? There's not been one guy that has left here because they didn't like it here. That was Mikko, and he did not like it. When he showed up, he said, there's 4 teams I'll go play for, but you're not one of them. So there's 28 other teams he wasn't going to, and the better question is, should we have known that before we signed him or attempted to sign him? Gensel was the totally opposite thing. If we had offered him the contract, if we offered him that, then he's here. But we didn't for whatever reason. That's a different conversation. All the other guys that walked out of here, I'm afraid it's just because they got paid a lot more money than we were offering. They all wanted to stay. So Mikko was the only one that I've been associated with that said, I don't want to. This is not for me. And I think there's other circumstances on that. It's not because of the hockey. It's because I think his family wasn't for him. So good, and I appreciate that he let us know that. We probably shouldn't have done. No, we probably should have known that before we made the deal. So Mikko Rantanen didn't want to be in Carolina, but to hear Rod Brind'Amour come out and say it like that, I was like, okay, wow. He just came out and said that. You don't hear that a lot, especially from a head coach.
Yeah, pretty shocking. And I think from his point of view, he's trying to dispel this narrative of Carolina has trouble retaining star players, especially in the aftermath of also losing Gensel last summer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I absolutely buy it. I absolutely buy it. This is a good one from Conversation, similar to this. He said, if Carolina and Colorado could go back, knowing where their teams and their competition are now, would they still make the Rantanen-Necas trade? I'm gonna say yes. Maybe if Carolina knows that it was going to come down to Dallas holding them hostage at the deadline, maybe obviously Carolina's a little bit different about it, but really, I think yes, we've broken it down. We broke it down last week that they were probably going to lose Marty Necas anyway, and everything else was kind of a throw-in for them. I think they came away from that and said, yeah, we still make that deal.
Yeah, especially because Stankoven is, I bet you they love him. Mm-hmm. He plays that sort of tenacious, hardworking game that some players don't fit in Carolina's system. Just straight up, Necas wasn't a great fit in Carolina's system, even though he was having some offensive success this year, especially with how young Stankoven is, cost controlled. That's a piece that I think the Canes are really excited about, given that, again, Necas was probably going to walk in a year and a half in free agency, and Jack Drury isn't really a high-end piece. Plus, you get the extra first-round picks. And from Colorado's perspective, I'm sure they hate the fact that they now have to play Rantanen in the Central Division. I'm sure they thought, oh, we're sending Rantanen out far east. We're not going to have to play against him in the playoffs. Whereas now he's going to be in the Central Division for a really, really long time. But from their perspective, getting Marty Necas has been a perfect fit with Nathan MacKinnon, and most importantly, he's not going to cost as much as Rantanen to keep. Excuse me. Long term, what does Necas cost on his next deal? Maybe $9 million. That's significant, and especially keep in mind too, it's not just 12 versus 9. Colorado having state income tax, the number to keep Rantanen in Colorado is probably a bit higher than it was in Dallas, where of course Rantanen won't have to pay state taxes. I think with the cost savings that Colorado got and getting a player who's nearly as good as Rantanen for slightly cheaper at a time when you know that Cale Makar's next contract is coming up relatively soon. Not to mention, Pierre LeBrun had an interesting article around the time when the cap was rising where he was speculating and wondering if a team like Colorado would even have the green light from ownership to spend to the cap, given how steeply it's expected to climb. So with all those factors in mind, I think the cap savings really matter for Colorado, and they do it again, given how well Necas has fit with MacKinnon.
Okay, and let's also not forget that Dallas and Colorado would face each other if the playoffs started today. Round 1 of the playoffs, you would get Mikko Rantanen against his old team, the team that traded him away. Dallas, Colorado. You've got Minnesota knocking on the door right now, just 2 points behind the Avs for that third in the Central spot. So we'll see. But if the playoffs started today, it would be Colorado versus Dallas, and I really, really hope we end up seeing that. That would be a ton of fun to watch. People in the chat, where did it go? Someone said that the game against Calgary is a must-win. Harmon, they're basically all must-wins at this point, but that one against Calgary, with the Canucks 1 point behind the Flames in the standings, that one really, really matters for the Canucks.
It's going to be tough too, because Calgary, they played on Saturday. They now have 3 full days off before they play the Canucks on Wednesday, whereas the Canucks, they're playing Montreal on Tuesday. So second leg of a back-to-back, the Flames are going to have the edge. I also wonder if I'm in charge of the goaltending decisions, I'm 100% playing Shelovs against Montreal and Lankinen against Calgary. The stakes are too high in the Calgary game. I'm playing Lankinen on the second leg of that back-to-back rather than the first leg.
I agree. I'm probably starting Tolopilo for the first one, but that's besides the point. I agree with you, Lankinen against Calgary. That's a playoff game. That's a playoff game for this team.
So it's going to be a turtle derby of a game, though, as far as offense, because the Flames are just as starved creating goals as the Canucks are. They beat the Canadiens 1-0 on Saturday, lost to the Stars 3-2 in OT on Thursday. They put up 6 against the Flyers, but I watched that game. The Flyers might have the worst goaltending in the league. Half of those goals shouldn't have gone in. So 6 goals, yeah, but they didn't actually create a whole lot in that game. I watched it. Lost 2-1 to Carolina in OT the game before that. Shutout against the Panthers 3-0 on March 1st. Shutout against Tampa the game before that on February 27th. Flames are just as hopeless offensively as the Canucks. So that's at least one upside for the Canucks is they're going up against a team that also can't really create much.
Here's something. Aaron Ekblad's been suspended 20 games for PEDs.
Oh, wow.
Not a joke. Not a joke. Aaron Ekblad suspended 20 games. At least they got Seth Jones. Like, imagine that Panthers blue line. I mean, it'd probably be okay. But they lose Aaron Ekblad. That is a big blow to the Panthers. And sorry, folks, this is happening in real time. How many games do the Panthers have?
18.
left?
So he'll miss 2 playoff games.
2 playoff games.
That's huge because, well, I was going to say if they end up playing Tampa, I was going to say if they end up playing Tampa in the first round, like the Lightning are stacked. But at this point, I think the Panthers are going to win the division.
Yeah.
They've won 6 in a row. They're 4 points up on the Leafs right now.
It would be
Leafs have a game
Ottawa.
in hand.
Yeah, it would be Ottawa. No, it would be Ottawa. It would be Ottawa that the Panthers face if the playoffs ended today, which they don't. 20 games for Aaron Ekblad.
Wait, is he still a pending UFA, right? He hasn't signed an extension yet, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, pending UFA.
So that'll be interesting what that's going to do for his market on July 1, right? Like, teams are still going to sign him, I'm sure, but is it going to cost him some money with, now a PED suspension leading into it? Very interesting.
All right. There you have it, folks. Breaking news to close out today's show. Let's get to our Bet365 bet of the day, which is brought to you by Bet365. Oh, good. The Leafs are playing. Those aren't great odds, though. Did the Leafs play last night? Like, I never know why these odds look like this, but I go with the vibes. Why are the Leafs like hardly the favorite tonight against Utah? I don't know. know.
Well, so the Leafs played Saturday night. They got spanked by Colorado 7-4.
Okay, well, that's actually good value then. The Leafs are going to win tonight. So I'm taking the Leafs money line, -120 for the Leafs to win. My Leafs are taking on the Utah Hockey Club. That's we're taking Leafs money line tonight, -120 odds. That was our bet of the day, brought to you by Bet365, a proud partner of Canucks Conversation. Open an account with Bet365 today and bet on a huge range of markets. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Be sure to use code NATION when you sign up for an account. Must be 90 plus play. If you choose to play, please play responsibly. All right, we'll wrap it up there. For my co-host Harman Dial and our technical producer Jacob Lazar, my name is Dave Rodrelli. Thanks so much for this episode of Canucks Conversation. Canucks Conversation is live Monday through Friday, every weekday at 2 p.m. over on the Canucks Army YouTube channel. Make sure you like, subscribe, and interact in the YouTube live chat every day with us, folks.